Warning. You are entering a restricted area. Return to where you came from, or be destroyed.
You're heading your way towards the useless nerdy knowledge. Please do not go any further. If you will not comply, you will hear a nerd ramble.
Nerd alert!
Get those nerds! 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 Exterminate!
Go ahead, make my day.
Bazinga!
I'll be back.
Hello, fellow podcast listeners. My name is Ben, and welcome to another episode of Useless Nerdy Knowledge. And remember to shop smart. Shop smart. Now, anyway, since we're at the final week of October, or the last full week of October, I guess, I feel like I'll go ahead and record 2 episodes of Useless Nerdy Knowledge, basically for this week and technically for next week. I figured I'd make one more Halloween-y episode, and I'll upload it on Halloween Day. I just feel like that, I don't know. I just feel like I need to make one more, and even though, like, next week it'll be November, I feel like since Halloween's on Sunday, I'll kind of count that as the next episode. So, as of this recording, I'm going to be recording this episode, and then the next one after this one. So, for this episode, I decided that I would talk about the scariest video games that I've ever played so far. This was like back from when I was, still like a kid, around, I want to say probably like 9 or 10 is probably when I played the game that was like probably the scariest to me, I think, maybe. And then of course, like down this list, it'll be more of like when I got older and older over time. And then of course with a couple games that I played recently. So with video games, I kind of like any kind of console, really, whether it's like basically like old retro consoles. Like, I have a lot. I have an Atari 2600, and I have a couple horror games for it, like Alien, which is basically a Pac-Man clone, and kind of a double-ender or double-sided Atari cartridge of the extremely rare video games of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Halloween. Those games themselves are like extremely rare and hard to find. This one, I believe, is like a fan-made double-ender cart that basically has both of the games in one whole cartridge. But they play very well, and they're really, really cool. I would never part with that thing, because I think it was kind of hard for me to find it at first, and then I was lucky to find it for one more time. I think I got it for like under $100 or something a long time ago. I don't remember, but it's still really cool. But of course, with an old game like that, it spawned a bunch of controversy because of how the pixelated violence was bad enough for it to be like pulled from shelves or hidden behind a counter, so adults could pay for it or whatever. But it's still really cool, really. As for that, there's not really anything else exactly. Like, I love all the other games like NES and Sega Genesis. I grew up with the Sega Genesis as a kid. That was like, I believe, the first video game console I ever owned. For NES, like, there's a few horror-related games I have, like Monster Party. I believe it's called Monster Party. And then, of course, there's the Castlevania trilogy, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, Fester's Quest, and there's like a couple others. And for the Sega Genesis, there's nothing that I can recall that have like any scary type of themes to it. I think I know that there's like a game called Splatterhouse, which is more of an arcade beat 'em up game. I haven't played that or know anything about it, except for the character in there is like basically looks like Jason in a way with the hockey mask and all that. But with like the games on Sega Genesis that I played, there's like a couple of scary horror-ish elements in there itself that feel a bit scary, I would say. One example would be in Clay Fighter on the Sega Genesis, and this was basically a childhood game that I played, where one character that you can play as is called Ichabod Clay, who is basically like a white sheet ghost that has a pumpkin for a head, and or jack-o'-lantern for a head, and like his home or base or whatever you want to call it is basically like a really creepy haunted house. Another thing I can kind of think of is the Tick on Sega Genesis, where this is a beat 'em up game that I played a lot as a kid, and to this day I cannot beat it without like a cheat device because of how the game drags on for an extremely long time. But anyway, there's like one stage in particular where it like takes place at a hospital, and the music in there is just really eerie and creepy to me. I always found it like really creepy. And probably one more thing I should mention is like on the Sega Genesis is Garfield Caught in the Act. This was another game that I played a lot as a kid and beat like so many times. Literally in the first stage is basically what's called Count Slobula's castle or something like that. And basically the entire setting is just like set in like a graveyard basically. So it's basically an entire horror themed stage basically. There's like ghosts and skeletons everywhere, so it's a bit creepy. Even the music is really eerie and interesting. The next stage after that is like Orangebeard's Revenge, where Garfield's like a pirate, and basically like you go off of like escaping on a boat from your ship, and like there's all these fishes and skeleton pirates and like these um, ship ship jeez, what do you want to call them? Cannons, thank you, that blow out of the ship, and then of course he'll go off on an island and all that. And the music in a way is kind of scary, and even like the way of how dark it is, the setting looks, it's a bit scary. So that's all I can think of for like the youngest of my childhood, really. Of course, I have like a few other games like N64, Sega Dreamcast, and like a twin Famicom, a retro trio that plays NES, Super NES, and Sega Genesis. Xbox 360, PlayStation 2, PlayStation 4, the Wii, and a couple others, but they're mainly handheld games. But basically, and Xbox too, the original Xbox actually. And this is basically where the list would technically start. When I was young, I remember playing the crap out of my original Xbox. The funny thing is that I had to go through like 3 different ones. Like the first one I had worked for I think a couple of years until it eventually like stopped playing any of the discs. So we basically threw it away, and I believe my dad bought me like 2 new ones, 2 different ones, until the third one actually was the one that worked, and I still have it currently, thankfully. The second one basically didn't read any of the discs at all or work. I don't think. And basically, like, he bought it from, I believe, an eBay seller who claimed that it worked. But of course, since it didn't, we decided to tear it open and beat the crap out of it with a hammer. I don't know why I did that, but I think I found that amusing at the time. But of course, the one that I currently have is, I believe, the third one that I have, and I hope to keep that for as long as I can. It reads discs fine, it works perfectly great, and I don't want to part with it because the Xbox 360, even though it can play most original Xbox games thanks to backwards compatibility. But of course, like, not all the Xbox games on the Xbox 360 can do that. It can only play most games, but still, it's just a nice option. But anyway, so the list would technically start at Peter Jackson's King Kong. Now, of course, this was basically a game that was based on the movie of Peter Jackson's King Kong in 2005. Of course, I had like a few other games like Godzilla Save the Earth, which is another game that's like one of my absolute favorites, and I played the crap out of that game. I think I had a couple other games at the time, but not as much because I was still, trying to expand my collection. But of course, I didn't have a job yet, and I had very little games at the time. But Peter Jackson's King Kong was still one that I love to this day, even though there's still some things I really hate about it, or not exactly, but some things that are a bit nitpicky, I guess you would say. But the one thing I find scary about it is that the fact that it's not meant to be a horror game, but I think that the way that the tone of it and the setting of it looks can definitely scare you, because there's like all these different like bat creatures and the dinosaurs that come at you surprisingly if they're like stumble upon you quietly and you may not be paying attention. It can really startle you. It can really scare you. I think for just a little short while when I was young that they kind of scared me a bit, because I always thought that the dinosaurs would come to me when I'm trying to sleep in my bed and they would like try to eat me or something like that. But yeah, it's like all these different like really creepy and gross creatures like these giant centipedes, these weird scorpion things, these terrifying looking red bats, these these like a weird hermit crab things, these what do you want to call them? They're like some sort of swamp lizard creatures, and yeah, mainly the dinosaurs are like extremely scary because of how big they are. But of course, thankfully, since you're in the game, you play as a Jack with a gun, and of course there are some parts where you get to play as King Kong, which is cool. But that's definitely like right up there on the list of like one of the scariest games I've played. Even though it's not meant to be scary, it can be scary in a way. Next on the list would be Slender the Arrival. Of course, I was aware at the time of who Slender was and who Slenderman was. I bought this from the Xbox 360 store, and I have it digitally on my Xbox 360 still. And it's it was pretty scary when I first played it, but of course now it's just more of a challenging game for me. I guess you would say, like, to try and challenge yourself to try and find all these different pages, all these different papers, and try and beat your score, try and beat the time, get these achievements and all this stuff. But it's pretty cool for what it is. Of course, like, I feel like nowadays not too many people care or like Slenderman because of there's a whole incident. I'm not going to get into it, but it involves like a stabbing and all that. But again, he was just all meant to be a creepypasta. For a little while, I thought he was real, but of course, I was just an idiot thinking, okay, how could something real get a video game out of it if it is? I used to think that Slenderman was real because of all these YouTube videos of like different people encountering him and these people giving you instructions how to summon Slenderman and all these different things of like these ancient medieval 1700s or 1600 whatever like style artwork of like Slenderman back in the day, or weird stuff like that of how he existed. I really don't think that he does. I don't at all, because he was made up in a creepypasta and then made into a video game. So yeah. Of course, the next on the list would be Outlast, and Outlast is definitely one of those really, really cool and interesting games. Basically, you play as an investigative reporter, Miles Upshur, who basically goes to a place called Mount Massive Asylum, where a company called Murkoff is like basically torturing and making experiments on mental patients. And then, of course, something called Project Walrider comes up on it, where something bad's happening, and basically Miles is the one to have his video recorder brought with him, basically to show evidence and to expose Murkoff, the Murkoff Corporation. I probably didn't say that all right, but it's fine. The game's been out for a few years already, so you can play it or look it up yourself anyway. But it's a really good and pretty scary game if you. But of course, the fact that I've seen it so many times on YouTube, and the fact that I've played it a few times and beat it a lot, it's not exactly scary for me anymore. But it's still a really good game. It's definitely something for someone who hasn't played it the first time, where you can like help them or guide them or whatever the heck. But it's still really good. It's like extremely graphic too, both in like the language and the amount of graphic violence and bloodshed probably. But it's still really good and really well made and pretty creepy really. And the fact with the whole night vision camera really makes it a lot more intense for you to figure out where you need to go, and the whole intensity of like trying to run away from villains and trying to reload your battery in the night vision is like really good and really well done. But it can be really tense and really scary. And then of course there is the DLC called Whistleblower, which is basically you play as a different character, but it's basically a sort of prequel, but it basically kind of takes place in the exact same day. Of course, you play as a completely different character where he worked for the Murkoff company, and then of course he was basically the whistleblower to tell Miles Upshur to expose Murkoff, and then of course he's trying to escape as well. And then of course there was Outlast II that came, I believe, a couple of years after. Let's see. First one came out, I believe, in 2013, and then Outlast 2 came out in 2017, I believe. This one was okay. I have some complaints about it. I'll get into it in a bit, but I can definitely say Outlast 2 is pretty scary. It's definitely a game that I really don't like to play because there's some things I hate about it, and there's just some things that I just don't like about it that, are just, well, anyway. So basically, you play as Blake Langerman, who's like a investigative journalist with his wife, Lynn, who basically are, trying to do a news report on someone who's been kidnapped. And basically, they crash in their helicopter of some sort of weird bright light. And then, of course, Blake tries to find Lynn, and then that's pretty much the whole plot, where he has to find Lynn, and basically they have to leave this weird. I believe you would refer to it as like a old 18th century style type of thing with a really messed up killer neighborhood, or whatever you want to call it. There's like two different religions. It's like the supposed Christians and heretics and all this. And it's like really weird, because I'm not going to get into it, because I feel like it's better you find out for yourself. But it's like really weird and really messed up. But it's just that with this one, it's okay. There are some things I do like about it that definitely improved from the first game. But there's just so many things I really don't like. For one thing, in the game, there's like a whole healing factor where you have to like find bandages to heal yourself if you keep getting hurt. Now, I understand they wanted to be a bit more realistic with it, but for me, it's just a real pain in the ass to have to heal yourself constantly if you're trying to be killed. And this is a really unfamiliar environment of where you don't really have a whole lot of resources or a clue of exactly where you need to go. In the first game, it was in a building where you could have a bit of a clue like where you could go. But with this one, it's just like you're out and literally outside in a field, in like different fields and all this stuff, where you have no idea where you're supposed to go, because there's no definitive clue of like where you need to go, and then you end up dying like over and over until you figure out, oh, I need to do this. And there's all these different like things of like, wait, where do I need to go? And you literally have no clue, and you're in a hurry because you don't want to get found or killed. And then eventually, like after the 15th time, you realize, oh, come on, I was supposed to do this the whole time? I was supposed to find that the whole time? How would you know? You would literally have to watch someone else do it or look it up yourself. And it's just really stupid, but whatever. Anyway, so, and the other thing that I really don't like that interrupts the game a whole lot is like the whole hallucination scene. There's like a whole thing where Blake has a hallucination of a recently killed friend who was killed as a kid, a young kid, and there's like a whole story behind that. I won't get into that because it's a bit disturbing, but you'll find out for yourself. But basically, it's like he has a whole bunch of hallucinations, and look, they're okay for the first couple of seconds, but it really drags on and really interrupts the gameplay and just really irritates me. Not to mention the fact that you have to literally wander around this school in the dark constantly, wasting your battery life and wasting your time so much. You keep like yelling to yourself, where am I supposed to go? Because every time you go here, you always end up going, geez, this again. Because you literally try so many doors to open it, and then you realize that like none of them work. Then you have to keep going back and forth, until eventually you actually find the same door that you thought you couldn't open is actually open. But yeah, that's pretty much it. If you want to find out more for yourself, go ahead and play it, or watch someone on YouTube play it, because it's sort of good. But for when I play it, it's just a real pain because of like the things I really don't like about it. So yeah. Now there is going to be a third Outlast game coming very, very soon. I really hope that I get the chance to play it, where it's called the Outlast Trials, where it looks more like it's in a virtual reality environment, and it looks multiplayer too. So that's a first, and honestly, I'm really excited for something like that to happen. It looks really cool. I've only seen like a teaser trailer for it, but hopefully they'll be able to get around to having it work, because that would be really cool to do it in multiplayer, because oh my gosh, that would look so good. In VR multiplayer too. It looks so cool and so terrifying. I just hope that they'll be able to pull it off. So next on the list for me would be Alien Isolation. This is a terrifying game, but sort of like Outlast 2, there are a couple things I don't like about it, but it's still an okay game. So basically, this is kind of a game in the Alien saga that basically takes place between the first Alien movie and Aliens. In this one, it's basically about 15 years after Ellen Ripley from the first Alien video game that basically it takes place 15 years after, and you play as Ellen Ripley's daughter, Amanda, who is mentioned briefly in the beginning of Aliens, and I think mentioned in a novel or something. I don't remember exactly. But basically, you play as her, and apparently there's, well, a xenomorph that's stumbled upon a ship, a cargo ship, and basically you have to try and fend off the alien and try to get rid of it. And of course, at first you have like a tracker basically to detect where the alien is. But the thing is that the alien isn't the only thing that's on the ship. You also have to deal with rogue humans who are trying to also escape, but at the same time trying to kill you. And of course, with androids that are also trying to kill any human that they can see, uh, just to have uh, the oh geez, I think it's Wayland Yutani corporation to basically keep the alien, kind of like in the first movie was to basically. So yeah, you basically have like three different things to worry about. And the alien is definitely the one where you have to worry about the most because it's AI, it's extremely intelligent and very aware. Because there's like one mode where you can have the PlayStation camera's audio on because if you make any noise, the alien will hear it and come towards you and kill you. You have to be very careful. You can't run, you can't make a sound, or else. And the fact that like the alien is unlike any other type of AI in any kind of survival video game, really, because it doesn't have a pattern where you can like try to figure out what to do. You have to like use different resources or be extremely patient to avoid the alien, and it gets really intense. It's really really terrifying. Of course, you eventually throughout the game, later in the game, much later in the game, you will be equipped with weapons. Eventually, you get stripped from them, and then you get them back. But it's like you have a handgun, you have the classic flamethrower, a shotgun, a stun baton to defend yourself against the androids, and then all these different other type of things you can use, and different stuff you can build with it. But it's a really cool game. It's not the best. There are a couple nitpicks I have about it, but it's still an okay game. Next for me on the list would be Five Nights at Freddy's Help Wanted VR. Of course, this is basically kind of a little collection of like basically recreating the first four Five Nights at Freddy's video games, but basically putting them in a VR setting with a couple of bonus games, including like a Halloween DLC called the Curse of Dreadbear. There's not really much for me to talk about for this one because I feel like Five Nights at Freddy's has been talked about to death. But this is definitely one I would recommend for like a little Halloween party or a little get together, I guess you would say. It's really cool and a lot of fun, and it didn't take me too long to complete it all 100% really. But it's still really fun. Next for me on the list is Paranormal Activity: The Lost Soul. This game is okay, I guess, but it's not really that great. I only got these like VR games because like I have a PlayStation VR headset, and I just wanted as many different types of VR games I got. I also got like a few non-VR non-horror VR games like Creed Rise to Glory, which is basically a boxing game, which is pretty cool, and then Job Simulator, which is a really entertainingly fun game. But anyway, regardless of that, I decided to get Paranormal Activity: The Lost Soul on PlayStation 4 because it was cheap, and I was like, okay, why not? And at first it was pretty scary at first, but then like later when I realized that there was like a couple things you had to get in order to complete the game, it just like really sucked because there's this one section where you can only go through like one type of thing only once, and you have to find this thing out in the dark, and it's the only thing. And it's the only time you go there. You can't go back. You have to go through this one sequence only like once, and you have to like get this cross that's in the dark in order to get to the one room or something like that, or one key. I think it's actually a key, but in order to get across from that room, in order to progress through the rest of the game. And there's like so much of the game just feels like total BS, where it's like you literally have to restart the entire game, and I think it's just a terrible design flaw, really. Like it had me at first, but as soon as I figured that there was a stupid, terrible design flaw and a dead dog in the game, I was like, okay, now this game kind of lost my interest. Like, maybe it's fine for a few minutes for someone to get scared and have them react over it, but the fact that you have to do so much work over it just really, really sucks. So yeah, the game isn't great, but I feel like it's just a fun time, I guess, to see someone pee their pants for a little bit. But yeah. Next on this is the Exorcist Legion VR. This is a pretty good game for, even though technically it's a bit short, it's still really good. With the Exorcist movies, not all of them are great. I only think that like the first one is like the best out of all of them, and the third one is a lot better than the second one. I mean, who likes the second one? But anyway, um, I'll probably get into that in a later time. But anyway, for this one, it's pretty good. You basically play as a detective, discovering that the demon Pazuzu is causing more trouble at the Church of St. Vincent de Paul. And I won't get into the whole detail of it, but I can definitely say it's really good. At first, I thought I was like playing as like a priest or something like that, but not exactly. You're basically playing as a detective with like all these different types of equipment that a exorcist would use to defend themselves from a demon or to exorcise someone. It's pretty good. There's like 5 different chapters in the game. I believe from when this originally released that there's like a season pass you could get where it's like eventually once the chapters came out one by one, you would be able to play them once they came out. But I got the entire like series basically, and it's pretty good. It's a bit scary, really. It really is. It may take a few minutes for you to discover what exactly to use and what to do, but it's still really good. It's really, really good. I can tell you one thing. It's a lot better than Paranormal Activity: The Lost Soul. Um, the only sad part about it is that there's no physical copy you can get it on like a disc or anything like that. The only option I'm aware of is that you can get it from the PlayStation Store. But regardless of that, it's still a really good game. And the final game that on my list would have to be Resident Evil 7 Biohazard. This was the very first Resident Evil 7, or the very first Resident Evil game I ever got. I'm aware of the fan base it has, and I'm aware that there were a few movies of it, but I never really got into it because I never knew anything about it. I never knew what it was about. I knew nothing about it. Didn't own, I just didn't own any of the games. I knew nothing about it. The only reason why I got this game, and this was the gold edition that I got of Resident Evil 7 Biohazard, but the reason why I got this is because it included a VR mode. I was just like, why not? It might scare me. But as soon as I got into it and I played it, I really, really liked it. For like my first ever exposure to Resident Evil, it's really good. I'm not going to get into the whole thing because there's a lot to talk about, but it's pretty cool. It's basically like similar to Alien Isolation, where eventually you get weapons and all that, but it's really, really cool. It's really good. I have heard a few people say that like Resident Evil 2, 3, or 4 are good, but I have yet to play them. I think there's like remastered editions too, but they're still really good. So yeah, if there's any, that's pretty much the entire list I have for any of the games, like the scariest games I've ever played, really, so far. I know there's a lot more out there, but it's still a really good and fun, entertaining enough games to play if you want to play any of these. So yeah, that's pretty much it. If you guys have any like video games that you like that you think are really, really scary, let me know. I'm the kind of guy who likes virtual reality just to make it a lot more scary for me, and I think it's really cool that way. So yeah, if you guys have any suggestions for any video games that you want to suggest to me, let me know. And tell me what your favorite horror video game is. So that's it for this episode of Useless Nerdy Knowledge. Be sure to check for the final episode of Useless Nerdy Knowledge on Halloween, and hopefully you enjoyed this episode, and hopefully you'll be able to stick around for the next episode. So thank you everybody so much for listening. I'll see you in the next one.